Here we go. Thank you, everyone, for joining us for this month's Transforming User Experiences for Healthcare Payers and Providers. For the next slide, my name is Ken Rooney. I'm going to be facilitating this conversation. If you can advance a slide there, Zach. Just some logistics for you. We are recording this program. Submit your questions and comments via chat. You can earn 1 CPE credit for this live session, and in order to do that, one is participate or watch this whole webinar, and number two, there are going to be 3 polling questions for you to answer during various intervals, so please answer the questions, and then we will be issuing...
Hey, Kenan, I'm not sure if it's just me. I can't hear you.
Oh, I don't know. Can anybody else hear me? Hey, YOLO, can you hear me?
I heard you, and then you trailed off, so I haven't heard you for the last 30 seconds or so.
It's very faint.
I'm sorry?
It's
1 CPE credit available for this live session, so answer the 3 questions, and then we'll be issuing your CPE certificate with the survey in 2 weeks. Let's go ahead to the next slide. So I'd like to introduce Zach and Mark, if you guys can introduce yourself and take it away.
So, Kenan, did you turn it over to me?
Yes.
I couldn't hear. Great, thank you very much. Well, it's great to be with you all here today. Again, my name is Mark Deutsch, and you can read a bit about my background, about my bio, but in a nutshell, I would say I'm the leader, one of the managing directors at Veracity, which is an RGP company, and we specialize in digital transformation. From a personal standpoint, my background is mostly in the healthcare field. I've done things outside of the healthcare space, but largely right before I joined Veracity about 4 years ago, I was the CEO of the largest pediatric medical practice in Virginia, which is where I'm based. And prior to that, I owned some diagnostic imaging centers, a home care company, IV infusion company as well. So I've had a lot of experience in the healthcare provider side of the house, as well as I spent some time consulting for the pharmaceutical space, and also was the first person in the home medical equipment space to build a capitated contract with a payer back in the late 80s, as a matter of fact, in early 90s. So a lot of experience in healthcare, and hopefully I'm going to bring some of those insights to bear for you today in our conversation. And with that, I'll send it over to my colleague, Zach, to give his bio.
Thanks, Mark. Are you able to hear me?
I can hear you. It's a little faint, actually, but I can hear you.
Okay. All right. Just making sure. It seems like we're having some difficulty with the microphone here. So let me switch over to my slide. Good afternoon, good morning, everybody, wherever you're located. I know we have a bunch of people on the call today. My name is Zach Berger. I am a senior manager in the Healthcare Business Advisory Group for Veracity. My background is mainly around provider and payer engagements with a focus on quality and member experience. So over my last 12, 15 years, I really focused on provider side and the payer side to deliver strategy and execution around Medicare Stars, Medicaid programs, commercial lines of business, and helping to improve the outcomes of member experience and transform those payer and providers within that healthcare industry. So happy to be here today, and happy to be sharing some of my wealth of knowledge with you all. So with that, I'll turn it back over to Mark for today's key takeaways.
Sure, absolutely. Thanks, Zach. And before I get into those, just a bit of high level context, maybe to set the stage a little bit for our conversation today before we drill into specifically around experience. So looking back at some of the trends in healthcare over the past couple of years, especially post-COVID. So we had COVID, of course, a worldwide pandemic that really shifted a lot of priorities when it comes to healthcare. At the same time, once we settled in, so to speak, with this is the normal is a normal today. So post-COVID in 21, early 22, some of the bigger trends we saw in healthcare, especially in our practice and in Veracity, for example, a lot of the work that we do really ties together human-centered experience and design in combination with technology in many cases. So the point of view we tend to bring is really that user experience, member, patient-centric point of view to how health systems can improve, be it payer, provider, or life sciences. So with that in mind, some of the trends we saw over the course of the last couple of years, leading up to 22-23, were expansions in digital health, also financial health for systems. I think a lot of systems saw a significant boost after or during COVID, and then after that settled down, a lot of financial losses and challenges actually, with people hesitant to go into hospitals and to get healthcare delivered. So financial health was critical. Artificial intelligence, machine learning were some of the bigger trends that we saw in the overall healthcare system. In the last year or so, some of those have stayed in place, but some of the bigger challenges and issues we've seen in the industry have been continued high cost of healthcare, fraud and abuse, cybersecurity, as well as ongoing staffing shortages, which is your key staff, as well as your healthcare practitioners and providers. As a result, anything that you can do as an organization to lower your expenses and lower the cost of care, better detect and manage fraud and abuse, keep your IT systems secure and protected, and optimize staffing will pay off. So those are some of the trends that we're seeing in the overall industry. At a high level, when it comes to the opportunities and trends today, and we're going to talk about these shortly, Zach's going to be sharing some insights here in just a few minutes. Three terms, I think, at a high level: digitizing, personalizing, and localizing, I think, are the three biggest trends that we're seeing in the industry. From a digitization standpoint, the digital transformation in healthcare was accelerated as a result of COVID. We've seen that continue as well, and continued movement towards digital means of delivering healthcare at a fast clip. The continued growth of smartwatches, fitness trackers, and data are driving care based on individual lifestyles and goals. So we're seeing that personalization, and also a lot of the expansion of at-home diagnostics and care continue to gain in the popularity and actually are accelerating. Also related to these, mental health is getting a light really shine brightly on it here the last couple of years. So we're seeing that trend continue, as well as more people are willing to pay for their care out of pocket, which continues to drive the consumerization of healthcare, which is a great segue into our conversation today, which talks about these key takeaways. So our key takeaways are going to be to focus on experience, and we're going to talk about the 5 ways to transform patient member user experience, talk about some industry trends. I think Zach's going to be able to expand on some of the overarching trends that I talk about, and then we'll give some specific examples of where we're seeing this in some of our clients with a few case studies. So with that, why don't I turn it back over to you, Zach, to take it from here.
Thank you, Mark. I'll switch it over here, and let me go one more slide. Sorry, it's a little slow here.
We can see it, Zach. You're good.
You can see it? Okay.
Yes. Yep.
So let me go one more slide. Here we go. So we're going to start this, I'll call it a journey today. And we'll start this journey on transforming the patient or member experience. And we'll start it with these 5 key areas. I think we all know as today, the patient experience encapsulates much more than it used to. Providing optimum healthcare is just not enough on its own. So it includes the satisfaction of the overall service, which includes just more than treatment. A satisfactory patient experience has the potential to drive profit and quality improvements in your practice. So it's no wonder why the healthcare providers are looking to improve it. For healthcare organizations, optimizing that patient experience is no longer an optional task. This has turned into a necessity, owning in current trends and the benefits of providing a patient-centric experience. So these 5 ways here that we have are some of the best practice and key leading industry magnets that are moving forward with the ways to transform that patient experience. The first one here, and we'll dive in deeper to each one, but the first one here is dedicate time for reputation management. So I think we all know that the patients don't evaluate many providers during their research process. And if you didn't know that and that's new, then we'll talk a little bit about that here. So once they find a provider and they come to you, that the game's on. It's time for that provider, that health plan to shine, as they have a small window to convert a patient and make sure their online or their in-person presence is well reflects you well. Prioritize patient education. A patient that doesn't know what they don't know may be challenging to satisfy, right? So if you don't have literature out there about your practice or your health plan or certain certain items around treatment, patients are not going to have the opportunity to take more ownership and control the expectations of what they're looking for, which is harder for the provider or the plan to really satisfy that patient. Providing a continuum of care. So this is a wide range here, and it's a big communication tool that can enhance patient satisfaction. This is where you make the patient's journey with you rather smooth. Next, we have build trust with a people first mentality. So even before the patient steps in the door, the member steps in your door, they need to have confidence. So you want to be transparent with them and making information accessible online and allowing room for questions when you're having a phone call or a consultation. And lastly, eliminating barriers to healthcare access. So access to care can play a significant role in members' overall satisfaction and loyalty. Understanding those unique challenges that they're facing on a daily basis to get to the care is going to help with a positive member experience. So with that, I will turn it over to Keenan for our first polling question.
I hope, can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Still very
I can hear you.
distant, and can barely hear you.
Why don't you guys talk? I'll just run the slide. Can someone just go ahead and do this part? I'm not going to talk anymore since I can't be heard. Go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, I'll pick it up. So first polling question for the group: on average, how many providers do members or patients research before making a selection? Okay, looks like we have our results are in. So 7% of us said 1, 29% of us said 2, and 64 said 3 or more. So remember those 7, 29, and 64. So if we jump over to the next slide here. So importance of dedicating the time for reputation management. I'll start off by looking at the bottom boxes there, and you can see the first two that we see address the polling question. And I think only 7% of us said patients only evaluate one provider. It's actually up to 50% that only evaluate one provider. And then 78% of us evaluate no more than 2 providers. So I saw that our majority of our people were in that 3 or more providers at 64%. It's actually doesn't get to that point, and about 80% of the population actually only looks up those 2 providers and evaluates them. So I thought that was very interesting. So you look at how do you dedicate that time for reputation management? And the insight here is patients evaluate fewer provider options than we might expect, as we just found out. So we need to switch our thinking and stop the reputation management the way that we know it. And really, you want to look at the patient's journey and paint a very clear picture of where you have the best opportunity to infiltrate that decision-making process with that patient. So how do we stop this reputation management the way that we're used to? There's a couple of ways here. So the first way is that the provider or the plan or the payer, they must instill trust early in the process, and that usually happening on the digital platform, right? So a lot of times we've moved away from calling up and scheduling. There are still some providers that do that, but a lot of times now you can go in and schedule online or get feedback online. So you want to make sure that you're getting that digital feedback, and the online reviews are addressed in a manner. And I know that takes time to do, but you want to make sure that you set that time aside so you can manage your organization's reputation every week with these members or those patients. The second piece is the patients, they want to feel, or the members, they want to feel that they're not alone in the experience. They want to feel that they're creating a system of connecting of other patients, a network or a community, as you might say. So there might be an opportunity for you to create a prospective patient network, or where you are having those patients talk to patients with similar experience that are actually going to that payer or that provider. And it takes more than just a patient testimony. It actually is taking that one step further and creating resources of existing patients willing to connect. So you have that one-on-one story sharing and that reputation management through word of mouth.
Hey, Zach, I'll add real quick to that last slide as well. So I saw this quite a bit in my former practice, as a matter of fact, where we had, a lot of clinicians were hesitant to respond to online reviews. And actually, in my case, my practice went so far as to say, let's just delete our social media. We don't want to give our patients the opportunity to provide feedback because we can't control the message. And I think it was important that was just a few years ago, I think, and it's really critical for firms now to understand you really can't do that. You can't just bury your head in the sand. You have to set up the structure in order to manage this properly, to respond. I also saw an article just this morning, I think, that related to the number of people that are, when they're upset about something, have a bad experience. It used to be you might tell a dozen people, for example. Now it's the average person can tell hundreds of people instantly. So if somebody really has a bad experience, you better believe they're going to share that broadly across the board. Also, when it comes to your point about creating communities, I think also in clinical trials, for example, if you're a life sciences provider, that's a great opportunity when people opt in to give them the opportunity to be part of a community as well with other folks that are going through trials. So there are different things you could do, I think, to focus on this, but it's certainly an area that's critical, I think. So I just wanted to throw in a few comments there.
Absolutely. Thanks for that industry experience. I know you've had many years in this field and have seen probably everything, and have a lot of good insight on where we're going, or where we've been and where we're at today with the digital experience. So the second one here is prioritize improvement to patient education. So insight here is just an opportunity to set better expectations for better outcomes. I think, as we all know in this industry, once you set those expectations, and it's a lot easier to manage those expectations. So as soon as the member or the patient fingers hit the search engine, that expectation setting game begins for both that provider, health plan, or the patient. So whether they're researching a procedure or treatment or evaluating health plans or providers, they're starting to form that picture in their mind and setting their own expectations. 56% of patients are bringing their own research to providers. We know that the research can come from everything like sites that just happen to have great search engines, and to legitimate, reputable medical sources. So I think we know that first thing that pops up when you look at a treatment or any type of procedure, you might see WebMD, you might see Wikipedia. Sometimes they're not just the best options for that search engine. So once they get in front of a provider, they usually have their mind made up or their expectation of what's going to happen. But what providers and payers need to do better is to make sure that you're managing that expectation and not only play educator when you're with that patient, but also sell that patient on an approach for a solution.
Hey, I have a quick question.
Yep.
Hey, look, everyone, my mic's working. Just have a quick question for you. I'm wondering if you have any information you can share about whether these prospective patients or look at whether the provider has telehealth or remote capabilities. Does that make a difference in the choices that people make at all anymore?
Absolutely, and it actually comes up on, I believe on our next slide here around the continuum of care. But now more than ever, patients or provider or members are taking into the account of telehealth, or they're taking into account the digital experience. And it's now shifting to all populations within the healthcare continuum. So Medicaid, Medicare, commercial, wherever that patient lands, there is some type of aspect of digital footprint that they are looking for, and they evaluate when they evaluate those providers or payers. I know personally myself, and I'm a little bit younger than maybe some people. I look for digital footprint. I always look for, can I get my records online? Can I schedule an appointment? Can I reschedule an appointment? And not because I don't want to talk to somebody, but I feel like it's the quickest way for me to know where I want to go. I have it in my head, and this is what I want to do. So there's a huge impact on that now, where they look at what's available to them as far as telehealth or the digital footprint.
Yeah, Ken, and I'll also add to that's a good question, I think, because it's also depending upon your demographics, right? As Zach said, so he's on the younger end of the spectrum, digital native, so was raised in a digital environment, whereas I'm a Gen X, so I came into the digital environment, had one foot in both worlds, and then there are people that are your boomers that similarly had one foot in the digital world, one foot out. So based on those different demographics, I think you're gonna have different expectations. So a lot of people, especially digital natives, like you said, Zach, they're going to look oftentimes at your digital footprint, digital first, and you better believe from a patient education standpoint that if you choose not to provide the patient education, again, payer, provider, life sciences, it doesn't matter, then people are going to go to Dr. Google. So it behooves you to make that decision strategically. Either we're going to just point people to Mayo Clinic, for example, for the information for patient education, or we're going to do it ourselves and control that message a little bit. But it's a strategic decision. But yeah, based on your demographics, I think people have different expectations. And I will also say it's not easy, especially as a provider. As I mentioned at the outset, more people have smartwatches and other devices to monitor activity. That's tough for physicians, especially to deal with nowadays. You know, and you have an average visit is 10 to 15 minutes, in some cases 7 minutes. So within that time frame, if I've got a patient, as Zach said, coming in with information, you know, I want to learn about this, doctor, can you share information? They need to move pretty quickly to get to their next patient. So now if you're bringing in data from your wearables, it creates a whole nother layer. So practitioners who can build their practice around that, especially with the digital native community, I think have a significant advantage in the market. So that was a good question.
So looking at this and looking at setting better expectations for better outcomes, where's the opportunity, or what is the opportunity? So the opportunity sounds pretty simple, but it's not as simple as you see in the industry. There's actually less of the educational content in the early planning of the patient journey or the member journey than patients or members would like to see. And really what it comes down to is those payers and those providers, they have this opportunity to take more control and more ownership over setting those expectations. They're the professional. They went to school for this. They know exactly what to educate this patient on before they have that one-on-one. So I think, you know, you got to look at some of the other industries that are out there, right? You look at, you know, consumer electronics, or you look at health and beauty and how they build their website as a tool, right? If you take a look at, you know, something like Apple and see all the interactive things that you can go in and you can click on to get educated about their products. Think of it that way, and how you could transfer that onto the patient journey or the member journey. And, you know, not just developing a blog content, but thinking about linking to those reputable resources. So we talked a little bit about patients go out, they might look at Wikipedia, they might look at WebMD. Instead of sending them there or giving them the chance to even click on those sites, send them to somewhere else that are medical journals that you refer to. Other things too is you could even take it one step further, and you could make it into a interactive quiz, or saying, hey, or, you know, show timelines or even infographics that how the patient journey is going to happen during that procedure, treatment, or even the health plan operation. And then the last thing too with this opportunity, it's not just on the patient too. Those provider payers, they need to educate fellow payers and providers within their network. And they also need to educate their staff. So the patient's getting a consistent message and consistent to their questions that are asked. Next, we have providing a continuum of care. So providing a continuum of care, the insight here is by helping the patient find and plan their care more effectively, you can optimize the patient experience across the entire care continuum. So when we look at it from a provider standpoint, when we look at it from a payer standpoint, it's both the same, right? It's a patient or a member that feels unheard or offended or dismissed during any part of the journey may turn to a different provider, may turn to a different payer, may even complain, and it just becomes a negative patient experience. And that's across anything. It can start with, you could have the best provider one-on-one interaction with the patient, but if they call billing and they're not getting the answers they want, or being transferred to 5 different people, or if they're calling scheduling to get a follow-up and they can't get in because the access to care is lacking, it goes through that realm of continuum of care. Everybody needs to be focused on that patient and member experience. So the opportunity here is the key patient experience touch points in place along the continuum care can make a huge difference and gains patient loyalty. And I think we all have a sense of that, but it's really just, not implementing and gathering metrics. That's a part of it. But you want to educate those patients on how to leverage that software, that digital footprint, on how to book appointments or purchase medicine or anything along those continuum care. So you show that patient, you have a strong continuum care, which then produces a positive member experience, patient experience. So you can see here on this little graphic that we have, 80% of Americans, patients, prefer to choose medical providers who use digital channels to communicate. So I think there was a question in the last slide about this, and how does that influence their decision? You can see there that about 80% of those American members or patients are looking at that digital footprint and seeing what that provider, that payer has available to make their life easier and to really integrate the continuum of care seamlessly.
Hey, I have a question real quick. I'm curious if you guys could share some of the differentiators of an experience, let's say a recent college graduate, and then someone that's near retirement, right? Their experience or their continuum of care experience would be totally different. I'm curious, this topic of transforming user experience, what organizations are doing to build it differently to address those different populations of people.
Yeah, I'd say, from my standpoint, great question. I think it's the more transformative companies that we're seeing, again, payer, provider, life sciences, regardless, they do a great job of personalizing that experience by asking you a few questions when you come in the front door. So a lot of organizations are moving to building a front door for their patients and for their members and for their customers. And then from there, it's kind of like choose your journey, so that if you provide just some basic information that I'm a college student, I'm 22 years old, just graduated college, I'm interested in this topic, anxiety. And then it's going to lead you through a specific path from a digital standpoint. So it's going to help drive that journey based on, if you've done a good job of mapping out what that journey looks like or what it should look like, then it's going to guide that conversation. If I come in as a senior, I can put in my age into that tool, for example, in that front door, and then it's going to open up a different door once I put my information in. So I think the more forward-thinking companies and organizations are doing that. They're building that journey based on providing some basic information. And then it's as simple as the screen can look different. The experience can look different. If you're senior and the system should be smart enough to know, the Amazon of the world has really set the bar. So we expect our experience to be as good as it is on Amazon because so many billions of people use that type of site. So I expect the same thing in my healthcare. So I expect that if I'm say I'm a senior and I've got visual impairment, the fonts are going to get bigger automatically. I shouldn't have to make that bigger myself. So there are simple things you can do, but it takes planning and understanding that journey in order to execute on that. But there's just a few things I think we're seeing in the market that are currently available today.
And actually, we have a question in the Q&A about from a position of customizing these journeys. What are some of the providers, healthcare systems that are making those customized journeys? Do you know
that
those systems? And then second question, by the way, is a sidebar question around how do you engage the population of the folks that aren't digitally fluent, right, or have access technology too? So those two questions. And by the way, we're at the bottom of the hour. Just a heads up. Thanks.
Great.
Okay.
Thank you. Yeah, Zach, you want to provide a comment or?
Yeah, I can comment. So I think the first question is if you're looking at providers and payers, I think we can all agree that the healthcare industry is a little bit behind the times. We're definitely catching up, but we're not as far as technologically advanced as some of the other industries. So when you're looking at who's doing this in the market, it's the industry leaders or the industry magnets, the big ones, right? So you're looking at Elephants, the United Health Groups, the Aetnas, the Optums. So all those big players in the market are really driving these patient journeys, and it shows. You can go on to the Medicare Medicaid website and look at their star rating and see if they have 5 stars, or you can go on to the NCQA website and see what their satisfaction scores, and they're 4 or 5 stars, and it really shows, because that's a big difference maker, and that's where CMS and the industry has really gone. It's focusing on the member and the patient and the experience, and that's why they, just this past year, CMS for Medicare Advantage plans, they've quadruple weighted some of their member experience to their CAP surveys, because that's what they're focusing on now, and that's where they want their Medicare Advantage plans to focus. So that was the first piece, and I can't remember the second question
about the population and the to get the digital the technology to be.
Yeah, I'll add a comment there. 2 things. Well, one is a large payer that we've had the opportunity to work with. I would say that focuses mostly in the Medicaid space, which is a challenging community to get a hold of in many cases. So in that particular case, they've done a good job of identifying when you sign up for the plan, you identify what your preferences and how you'd like to be communicated. And they don't just file that, they use that. So if you say, I want to be communicated by phone on my cell phone, that's how they communicate with you. And they created a concierge system. So if you're part of a population health that's more expensive, a high utilizer of care, it behooves the health plan to create a separate structure for you so they can follow up with you and get you better care so you don't access the systems as much. So those concierge type systems we're seeing growth of. Also with the Veterans Administration, which is one of our clients that we get the opportunity to work with, they've done a lot as far as tying all their systems together. They had probably 90 different systems that were legacy that were not talking to each other, and we helped to connect those systems together. So now they can do more with that data. So they can identify patients. For example, one of the goals of the VA is to reduce the number of veterans that commit suicide. And so by having access to that data, they can see that, okay, I'm a veteran myself. So Mark didn't come to his appointment. He didn't refill his prescription for his psychiatric medications. So they can track that and intervene more quickly. So a legacy system such as the VA, if they can do it, they're doing a great job. And I think many other organizations have the opportunity to do it as well. So just a couple of examples there, I think that might be helpful.
Yeah, it's always going to be a challenge with that population, and really what it has to be on the provider or the payer to be proactive. Having concierge service, as Mark mentioned, looking at data and seeing where you have your high risk population, how are you making outreach, and how are you breaking down access or barriers to access of care to get them seen or get them in for those preventative services, so something more critical doesn't happen down the road. So all good points there. So polling question number 2.
What do you think is the most important to a member patient when selecting a provider? A, up-to-date equipment and devices. B, insurance coverage. C, knowledge and qualifications. D, reputation. And E, proximity to residency. One more people. Thank you. Pretty broad across the board, but consistently in insurance coverage and reputation.
Okay, let's flip on to the next slide here and we'll talk about it. So the next point here is just build trust with a people first mentality. Again, we'll start with the answers for the polling question. And you can see here, this is how it breaks down for top 5 factors when selecting a provider. The top one there is at 49% reputation of the provider. 40% is knowledge and qualification. 35% is insurance coverage. 32% proximity to residency, and I can't see the last one. I think that was 27% of up-to-date equipment or devices. So really, what does this tell us? So what tells us is the insight, the patient experience is uncertainty from the start of the journey. And the providers have 2 options. They can meet their patients where they're at, right? Or they can market based on the factors. And we can take that opportunity to educate the patient on specific factors, but this gives us the opportunity for education and to bring the care to them and to sell more on value, right? So the reputation is at the top there, selling more on value of what that provider looks like. So your opportunity here is really, you want to humanize the provider well before an in-person visit. And I think we talked a lot about this, getting that reputation of the provider and humanizing them, through one way to do it is proactively offering transparency. And I think we see a lot of that now in the industry. So the goal of every provider payer is to be more in the humanized before the in-person visit. So this is where the content can be that provider's best friend. You can create simple selection guides with topics on how to pick the right provider for you and questions patients don't realize they're asking their provider. So you're taking that industry knowledge and you're sharing with that patient. And basically you're saying to them, hey, if I'm not the right person to see, let's get you to the right person to see, and building that trust within that member and that patient before they come into the door. So once they're able to do that, then, creating an initial follow-up that continues that conversation, but can be delivered in different ways to take some weight off that patient, right? So whether it's an intake call, whether it's an email, something through a patient portal, really, again, taking that anxiety of finding a provider or the distrust and building that up right before they get into the door. And then the other thing is too, is, allowing those provider personalities to shine through. So there's places out there, platforms, some like RealSoft, and they're developed specifically to help physicians personally connect with their patients by creating opportunities for the physician to demonstrate their commitment to the patient beyond making $1. So there are platforms out there that you can invest in or some other means to really show the value, show the reputation, the knowledge, qualification, and really promote yourself as a provider. And eliminate barriers to healthcare access. So this is a big one, and I'd say it affects any aspect of the care continuum within the journey. So we want to understand, as far as the insight, you want to understand the unique needs and challenges of each member, and it's indispensable to a positive member experience. So barriers can reduce or eliminate through service, such as telehealth, but health plans must make that an option, or providers must make that an option. So there's a bunch of opportunities here, right? So we can leverage technology to remove barriers and enhance patient member experience, and find tools, partners with capabilities to remove those barriers for access to care to improve patient experience. So I think this really goes back and touches upon the digital footprint on what you have in your health plan or your provider practice. And depending on what you have is going to help break down these barriers. So the first one here is a really big one. It's the transportation one. About 3.6 Americans do not receive medical care due to transportation. And 4% of American children miss a medical appointment for the same reason. So you can see it's a huge barrier. And one of the ways to break this down is through telehealth. So telehealth can help you with not having transportation, as well as there's other options out there for your health plan to build a continuum of care through a transportation program where you partner with Lyft or Uber to provide rides to this population to get to those appointments, so they're not burdened with transportation.
Hey,
Second one is,
hey,
what's that?
Zach, I'm opening up Stephen, who has a question or a comment. Stephen,
Okay.
are you there? Stephen? Are you there? I've unmuted him.
Okay. Hi there. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. I wanted to find out if you have any experience rating on as it relates to members' relationship with teledoc experience. Does a member feel like they're not getting the same experience versus an in-office, and do they feel that the experience is not satisfying to them?
Yeah, great question, Stephen. So for my part, what I would say is it depends. So I think it depends on the type of care that they're receiving. So I think if a patient is looking for telemedicine for something that's more acute, that really wasn't a good fit for telemedicine, there's still a lot of confusion in the marketplace as far as where you should go based on your condition. And I think some of the more forward-thinking and transformative companies have done a better job of making that really clear on their website or on their apps, so you know when and where to go where. So I think if it's something that is not that acute, something pretty common, there's high degree of satisfaction. So to save people the time to go to travel, if I just have a sniffle, for example, and just need to get some antibiotics, there are often things like that that can be taken care of. Dermatology is a great fit for telemedicine. So based on the disease state or based on the type of care you're looking to receive, I think there's different rates of how much you can enjoy that type of care. It also depends upon, again, some of the demographics. I think if you're parents with children, there's much higher degrees of satisfaction in that particular population by using telemedicine first. So if I've got a sick child, I'd much prefer to use that type of care, or in many cases have urgent care that can come to my home, which is also growing and gaining in popularity. So I think there's a couple of it depends, I would say, in those cases, but hopefully that gives some sense of some of the data that we're seeing out there.
Yes, thank you very much.
Yeah, and I'll just touch on that too. Just another key point, and really what members or patients need to really consider when they're going to a teledoc or a doctor on demand is this person that you're meeting with, this doctor, is somebody that's going to help with the pain that you're feeling right then and there and alleviate that pain. They don't technically know your history. They don't know what you've been through before. So it depends on what you're looking for, but I can say that I do see providers moving towards that telehealth just within their own platform. I know that me personally, for me to go see my PCP, I can set up a telehealth visit and go see them, and I have it's not a different to me if I'm in the office or not, because it's still my same provider. They know my history, and it's just like an office visit, but I'm taking it from my house.
Thank you.
So number two here, just really the geographic location, right? So 1 in 5 Americans, or about 60 million people, live in rural communities. So, as we see in the reports and some of the studies, there's a lower quality of healthcare. There's that social determinant of health. So with that, there becomes physician shortages. There's poverty. There's a greater number of uninsured, and also there's long travel distance that make up these discrepancies for Americans to get healthcare access. So telehealth is not location dependent. It's available in urban and rural communities, and can help alleviate some of the burden. Now, I know that it's not going to alleviate all the burden because some people don't have access to that digital footprint, but there's a small inkling of we can help these people in any way, that's an option as well. Third one you see here is the elderly or disabled or mobilely impaired. So currently about 15% of American population is considered senior, and nearly 40% of those seniors have at least one disability, and mainly that disability is an issue with mobility. So in addition to that, there's also reports that 1 in 4 US adults living with a disability and mobility issue are the most common. So those who can't get doctor's appointments because they can't, transportation takes too long, they can't get out of the house, it's too laborious to do so, telehealth can help. It can help with seeing the appointments, making it easy to track their progress. There's also those remote patient monitoring tools that they can use, and any type of chronic disease management without that need for that continual in-person appointment. Number 4, the low income and access to affordable healthcare. So about 44.5% of Americans fail to obtain needed medical care due to costs. So that, as we know here, there has been the ACA plans that are out there, but if you've gone out and look at the ACA plans, they are quite costly. Medicaid has been relaxed for the last few years because of COVID, but now that COVID is, I don't want to say in the past, but it's starting to dwindle. The CMS and the states are now starting to re-up their eligibility rules for Medicaid, losing, Medicaid enrollment for tons of people throughout the United States. So that leads back to the low income that can't afford the insurance or they can't afford the care. Telehealth is cost effective, and it can actually be more cost effective than being in that traditional healthcare setting where you're being billed. Number 5, the uninsured and access to healthcare. So about 27 million non-elderly members or population were underinsured in America, and that was even under the Affordable Care Act. And that really what it barred down to with why is because it was too expensive for insurance. So about 1 in 5 uninsured adults went without needed medical care due to costs. And that includes anything from major health conditions and preventative care for chronic diseases. So again, telehealth, it can help here because it doesn't require insurance, and most of those telehealth platforms are lower on cost. And lastly, there's long waits. I think we've all been a part of this in the healthcare, and I'm not just saying waiting in the waiting room for half an hour because the doctor's behind. I'm saying waiting days or weeks to get to manage chronic pain, manage a chronic illness. So a recent study showed that about 24 days was the average wait time to schedule a provider appointment in 15 of the largest cities. And you look at the rural data, and those wait times go up, and that's due to physician shortages and other people that are aging boomers that are now becoming that population. So you have an influx of volume. Again, telehealth it can help combat that with the being able to get somebody pretty much on demand and seeing somebody at the click of a button or live time.
Okay, great. Next polling question. By the way, it's 10 minutes before the hour. Third polling question, last one. Which of the top 6 healthcare access barriers that Zach just spoke to do you think your member patients struggle with the most? Transportation, B, geographic location, C, elderly, D, low income, E, uninsured, and F, long waits. A couple more responses there. Long waits and low income.
Yeah, and it's really, it's a combination of those two. So, the lower income, or even if you call it the uninsured, leads to those longer waits because they're waiting to get seen by the provider. So I think the group here is spot on with, what contributes to that, to this, or what are the top contributors to those 6 healthcare access barriers. So I know we only have about 10 minutes left, so just want to talk a couple key points here about the move to virtual care. I think we spent a lot of time on this. So really, talking about why. So the why, or we're moving to virtual care, it's implementing that virtual care as a vital component within the healthcare system because of the industry pressure from high worker shortages. Right. So we talked about the doctor and nurses shortages. There is the COVID-19 push for amplified virtual care. And looking at COVID-19, I think it changed everybody. It changed everybody's technology output and really brought a lot of industries up to or close to where they should be at this day and age of technology. The care managing chronic diseases, right? So it's easier to get on and have follow-up appointments and manage someone's care through remote patient monitoring tools or chronic diseases through those tools. The desire for accessibility. We just talked about the key barriers. Now moving towards this virtual care will help with the accessibility of seeing when needed and not having to pay tons of money out of pocket no matter where you are. And then lastly is just the rising needs to curb healthcare costs. I think we all see that healthcare is increasing. The cost for insurance increases, procedures increase along with that, and able to curb that cost, there needs to be a better access with a lower cost potential to really drive and keep the quality of care for those patients. So really, how's the market shifted? So really, the market's really shifted is, you look at the impact side and the digital health, it continues to grow. I think it really took off during COVID. That's something that accelerated it. And you can see here that looking at future significance, that digital health footprint is expected to reach 1.4 billion by 2030. And I think, it's probably going to be more as we adapt, as we continue to really excel in that area. The second piece here is you look at the investment into digital startups accelerate. So that's a huge market impact. And you're seeing a lot of things like, teledocs coming up. There's, I think you even look at Amazon's looking to start a health plan, which will have digital footprints. So there's a lot of people out there that are not in the healthcare space right now that have very, very, very good digital footprints that are now starting to, spin off startups and accelerate the footprint of the digital space within healthcare. And then that becomes that patient experience, member experience, that direct to consumer model. Remote patient monitoring, I think we talked about this, right? So having the ability to not have to go in every week or 2 weeks for a follow-up on a chronic disease or an illness, and doing it from your home. And let's say if something is happening, you can have a phone call or a first alert that has you taken care of, or calls in a provider when needed. And then the demand for digital care, right? So right now, about 41% of members say that they would switch to a provider. They would switch their provider due to lack of digital capabilities. So we're seeing members really demand the digital capabilities from those providers, and even willing to change providers to get that. So these providers, to push for that member satisfaction, they need to adapt and to continue to adapt and stay ahead of the curve for digital healthcare within their practices and their everyday member journeys. So if we look at the driving values across these 5 key areas, you can see here we have improving these clinical outcomes. So the driving area around here is, if you look at it, this drives that 74% adherence rate on average for heart failure medication is through home-based monitoring. So it helps improve those clinical access as far as, or the outcomes through medication adherence for something like this heart failure. The enhanced care coordination. So looking at enhanced care coordination, about 1 in 2 physicians see improved care coordination and quality of care through virtual care. So you're talking about half there. Expand consumer and clinician access. By 2030, non-procedural specialists, behavioral health, chronic care management, and others will almost conduct about 9 times more virtual visits than today. So you think about the spaces that you're seeing, headspaces out there. There's a bunch of different apps through mental and well-being now. They're saying 9 times more you're going to see virtual visits than today. And then improve efficiency. I think we talked about this, not having to travel, taking it from your home, whether you're in sweatpants or jeans, whatever you like to wear during the week. Patients save about 2 hours to take on virtual care and not have to go to a physician visit, travel, wait, be seen, come home, etc. And lastly, it's the enhanced consumer experience. So 2 in 3 health plans think virtual health has improved overall member satisfaction. So 2 in 3, so that's about 66%. And this is, in my opinion, we are just getting started on this virtual journey. So you can see there, looking at the key points across the virtual continuum of care, coupled with patient and member experience journeys and providing positive outcomes by driving those member and patient experience, really is what we're going towards as a healthcare industry for the next and foreseeable years of our lives and beyond that. So I'll stop there. We have about 2 minutes left and see if there's any questions.
Is there a final slide there? I think there is. In there.
Yeah, Ken, and I think so while Zach rolls through that, we did have some examples, some case studies. So since we're running a bit short on time, what I'm happy to do is I can supplement these slides to provide some bullet points on what these case studies were, as well as at the end of the deck after this slide, actually, all of our sources that we used for the data, we have sourced as well. So there'll be links in order to access the source data. So as a follow-up to send to all the participants today, we'll make a few changes to these slides and I'll get them out to you to share with all the registrants for the webinar today.
Yes, we'll do that. I talk too much because I'm very passionate about this.
Thank you everyone for joining us, and thanks for filling that out. The CPE will be out in a couple of weeks as well as a survey. I'm going to stop the recording.